This is a kid that absolutely walks to his own beat. Help me welcome to Listen University Stage for the very first time, Mr. Keaton Allen.
Well, thank you. This is such an honor to be joining everyone out on YouTube. I've been able to watch all the talks that have gone on before now, and I've just been waiting for my chance to get up here. I'd like to start off, just like Jason said earlier in the last talk, that he has changed kind of what he wanted to talk about today a few times, and I also did this for mine too. And part of it is the stress of all the things I've got going on in my life. And I think everyone can feel that also. We have so many things, and if you think about a pie, that's how much time we have each day, and these little slivers that if we're going to spend time preparing a talk for the great Listen University audience, what are we going to take time away from? What are we going to do to free up that time to be able to prepare to do this? And that's kind of the topic I want to talk about, is how do we get everything done, and about education, and how do we do those two things. I think a lot of us think that there's not enough time. Think about the things that we have to worry about. We got our family, we have a job. A lot of us have a second job. Some of us have like a DJ job or something, one of those kind of like things you do for fun that is also taking up time. You got family, you've got maybe something you do in your church, in your community. We've got all these different things going on, and there's only so much of each day. And you can get less sleep for a night or two, but you can't do that for long term. And it's just figuring out, where do you find time to educate yourself and to have some me time and to continue to develop yourself. And so what I want to do is share 3 stories, and hopefully we can learn something from each of the stories. The first story I wanted to share is for the last 8 years or so, I've been overseeing an executive MBA program from a top-ranked business school. And one of the things that I got to do is to interview everybody that was coming and applying for this business school. And, we wanted to stay the best business school, and so one of the things you have to do is you have to have the best people in your school, the best students. And so we sought out to try to figure out what that was, what caused someone to be a great student and a successful one. And how we measured success was in their grades and if they got jobs afterwards, and how that did for them. And so kind of historically, people will consider, are you a good fit for the school? So for example, I worked at an international school, so we wanted people with some international experience. You might look at academic ability, and that could be measured by GMAT test is a business test that we use to determine someone's business acumen. You might look at an undergraduate GPA. And so we look at those kinds of things to try to figure out, are they going to be a good student? Are they going to be able to do good in this? And then the last thing is their work experience. So we'll look at what jobs they've done and what position they hold now and how many people they oversee and some of those kinds of things. And we did some analysis on it to see which one of those is probably the biggest indicator of success in an MBA program. And what we found was there is no correlation with any of them. So they could be a great undergrad student and be a horrible MBA student. They could be maybe the fit. The fit's still important. But they could have an awesome job now and not do well. Or they could be maybe just 3 or 4 years of work experience and do great. So those weren't really determining factors. And what we found when we looked at all the people that were successful was that it came down to their motivation of why they were there and why they were doing this program. And so we started adding that to our interviews. And one of the interviews that I remember more than any others was with a Google exec. He wanted to fly to Arizona, where the school was, every other weekend and do this course. And listening to him, he had a great pedigree. He was in the military. He's got a great job at Google now. Everything looked just where you'd want to be. And I remember asking him, why would you want to do this? Because this is actually a great candidate for, could be great because of his grades and everything, but if they don't have a good reason, might give up, might not follow through with it, work might get in the way. Tried to ask him, why do you want to do this? And he said, you know what? if without a formal education, you can only learn from your own life experiences. With a formal education, you can learn from everyone's life experiences, lots of people's life experiences. And I mean, just take a second to think about that, because I don't know how much time we really realize that. You know, there's people that we know that have learned a lot through, they've got street smarts. They've done a lot. They've figured it out on their own, but they can only learn from their own experiences. There are people who have spent an entire lifetime developing a theorem or something that you can use that you could learn in a day and utilize their whole life's work in doing it. So that really pounded home to me, a guy who was working at a school. I don't think I ever truly realized how powerful education can be. And when I talk about education, all forms. Education meaning like a degree, a non-degree, personal development, even go as far as to say like the scriptures. I mean, you think about it, we go to church. Why do we go to church? Because we could have our own spiritual experiences at home. But you go there, you get to learn from everyone else and the experiences they've had. You get to read the scriptures and learn about people in the Old Testament, New Testament, and the experiences that they had. And so really education comes from that, from learning from other people. Next story I want to tell you is when I first started to go to the school that I ended up working for. It was a really busy time in my life. We had gone for about 10 years where we were trying to have kids. We ended up doing in vitro 3 times. And I found out that I was going to go to business school, that I got admitted to the school that I aspired to go to the same day we found out that in vitro had worked and we're having twins. I actually called my wife to tell her I got admitted, and I said, I got great news. And she says, I got bigger news. And I said, no, you don't. And she said, yes, I do. She says, we're having twins. And I said, see, I won. I got admitted. And anyway, I think her news is better. It just took me a while to realize it. But at the same time, if you think about it, this is back in 2007, 2008, there was quite a big, the economy was crashing. Lots of things were going bad, and I worked at a hotel. I worked at Marriott Hotels, and when the economy went bad, all the big companies canceled all their conventions that they were having in this region of the United States. And so my job was to negotiate rates, negotiate these contracts, and to get people to come and have these events. All of a sudden, all that was falling apart. So there was a lot of stress going on at work with what was going to happen. So we had work stress, school, family. My wife worked full time. I was a scoutmaster. We had a whole bunch of stuff going on. And I know I'm preaching to the choir because everyone's got this going on in our lives. I think that no matter what, because we have that one pie, right? No matter what, we fill it and it feels full. I think I'm even more stressed now than I was then. And you probably are too. And so I went to my boss and I told him, I said, look, I'm going to go back to school because I want to be better. And, with the economy doing what it's doing, Marriott wasn't doing as much training, and I wanted to make sure to continue my personal development, my growth. And he said, if you do that, I will fire you by the end of the year. And I was shocked. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, this is great. Like, I'm developing myself. And he said, where do you think you're going to get time to do that? Like, you're going to take it away from your work. Like, we need you right now, full time. We need all of you. We can't have you divided in what you're trying to do. And I said, well, we'll see, And he knew it. As soon as he told me that he would fire me, he knew I would do it. He told me that later. He's like, as soon as I told you that, I knew you would do it because that's kind of the person you are. Which I think that's a positive. I don't know. But I did. I knew I had to do it. And funny enough, I remember a few weeks into class, thinking, how am I going to do this? Like, I don't have time at home. I don't have time at work. What am I going to do? And in one of the classes, they talked about how you need to prioritize. And I determined that I would prioritize by taking 1 to 2 hours a day away from work. So exactly what my boss thought I would do, and he was 100% right. But what I did was I prioritized my accounts. So I had about 30 accounts that brought in about $4 million a year. And I determined that the top 4 or 5 were doing most of that, bringing in, and I was going to focus time on them, and that would free up time for school. And so I did this, and it was working. It was working smoothly until I was at a convention, and my number one account, which represented about 30% of the money that got brought in, General Dynamics, it's a defense contractor, they announced in front of the entire nation of hoteliers that they were no longer going to use Marriott anymore because of something that's happening in New York City. And it all came crashing down. I had spent all my time on this one account, and I don't know what I was going to do. I had a couple months before the deadline that my boss told me he was going to fire me, and I knew that it was over. But the next weekend, I sat in a class, and that class, it was about, I remember the slide right now. It said, local problems often have global solutions. And that was what that class was on that day. And I remember trying to think about it. Okay, I have a problem because I'm going to lose 30% of the business that I represent in Arizona. What could possibly be a global solution to this? And so I started thinking. I started looking at where they had offices. I started looking at where we had hotels. I started looking at I didn't have this information because I didn't represent the world. I represented Arizona. So I had to go and I had to start calling hotels and asking them what their occupancy was and what this looked like, and just trying to get as much information as I could. And it turned out that it would work if we did a global agreement with them. So if we said that we get 100% of their travelers and they get access to 100% of our hotels for their rate, it would make sense for both sides. And so I went to General Dynamics and I said, all right, look, here's my plan. I gave them a presentation. I said, this would work. And they said, you can't do that because that's not what Marriott does. And I said, let me take care of Marriott. I think this makes sense. It's going to make both sides money. It's going to save you money, and it's going to make us more money, and I think everyone wins. And so they said, okay. So I started running up the flagpole at Marriott, and everyone's like, no, that is the stupidest thing we've ever heard. We don't do that. We have franchises. We can't tell them what to do, all this kind of stuff. And it's just not the way business had been done in the past. And so I did what everyone would do. I found out when Mr. Marriott was going to be in Arizona, and I called his people, and I said, look, here's what I need you to do. You're going to find out I lied to him, but just listen. All right, this is what I need you to do. I need you to, you're going to be staying at this resort, and at noon, you're going to be opening up this new courtyard in Phoenix. Can you have Mr. Marriott just stop by this account that's right in between and just shake their hands? They'll stand by the car, you'll shake hands, we'll take a picture, thank them for their business, and then you can move on. You can go to your thing. And the guy said, okay, we'll do this, but you got 5 minutes, that's it. I said, that's all I need. So I went to General Dynamics and I said, here's a PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to bring Mr. Marriott to your office. You need to not let him leave, and you need to give him this presentation. So that's exactly what happened. Mr. Marriott stopped. They invited him in. Turns out that they were like long-lost buddies from forever. I mean, they'd never met each other, but they both served in the military, and they both flew the same planes. And anyway, Mr. Marriott was there for 2 hours. He was 2 hours late to the grand opening of that hotel. And when he left, they had a handshake agreement that this deal was going to get done. A few months later, it ended up being a $225 million contract that they signed because of this PowerPoint that General Dynamics gave to them. Funny enough, Mr. Marriott thought I was a General Dynamics employee, so he didn't even know my name, never any of that, but I orchestrated the whole thing. And I don't get paid on commissions. All I got to do is keep my job. But I learned a couple things from education, and I think that's the point that I wanted to share with this, is that diverse education helps you find solutions. Just because, it looked at the time like I didn't have time to go to school, but the things that you're learning are so powerful and so important that they can make you produce more. They can help you solve problems and help you do that. You can't minimize the impact that personal development can have on your life. Now, 74 hot dogs in 10 minutes, okay? That's the next thing I want to talk about is competitive eating. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen a hot dog eating contest, but it can be pretty crazy. I've watched a few of them, and it's really gross. So 74, that's the record, 74 hot dogs in 10 minutes. Now, I've got pancakes on this screen. I don't know if you can see my screen. Can you see my screen? Oh, yeah, you can. Pancakes, okay? 74 hot dogs, pancakes. I want to talk about a time where I was sitting in my bed trying to figure out something to watch for TV. My wife always goes to bed a little bit earlier than me, and that's my time to just sit and watch really worthless shows. And one night I couldn't find anything, and I ended up getting to, I believe, the Travel Channel. And there was a show called Man vs. Food. And I don't know if you've ever seen this, but he just goes out and he finds these restaurants that have these eating contests. I mean, he's not competing against other people right there. It's one of those where, like, if you eat this giant steak, you get a t-shirt and you get your name on the wall, right? And so he was at this place where they had pancakes. And they had a record, not a record, they had a contest if you could eat this giant stack of pancakes. And I'm thinking it's 10 pounds. It's much more than a human should eat. Giant, giant pancakes. And he sits in front of it, and you can just looking at it, you're like, yeah, there's no way. A person cannot eat that. And the timer starts, he's got an hour, and he starts eating it. And he's eating, and he's eating. And probably 30 minutes goes by on the timer, and he's only eaten like this sliver of this giant stack of pancakes. And the thing is he's starting to turn colors. Like, he's turning a little green. Like, I'm keeping the remote handy because I know at any moment, I'm not sure what kind of Travel Channel is. Like, are they going to show him puking? I don't know. But I'm ready to turn it because I'm not in the mood for that. And he's going, and he's starting to like shake as he gets the fork up to his mouth, and eventually he just stops, and he just kind of sits there for a minute, and you're like, it's done. You know, I mean, I've watched this show a couple times, and he always ends up eating everything, but for some reason, I think he's not going to do it tonight. Like, he's not even close, and he's running out of time. He sits there for a second, and then he calls to the waitress, and he says, come here, oh, feebly, right? Come here. She comes over, and he's like, I need a pound of bacon. And that's kind of what, like, in the audience, everyone was like, what? What's that? Whoa. You know, people are starting to talk to the person next to him like he's given up and now he's just eating bacon, which really isn't a bad thing, right? I mean, most of us love bacon. And if you don't love bacon, anyways, it's salty goodness, okay? So he asks for a pound of bacon. Time elapses. The bacon gets put in front of him, and he starts eating bacon. And it's just kind of like, all right, okay, I'm not sure what this show is now. It's just moved on to something else now. So he's just eating bacon. And then he looks at the pancakes, and he starts eating pancakes. And he goes, bite of pancakes, bite of bacon. Bite of pancakes, bite of bacon. And he starts speeding it up. Pancakes, bacon, pancakes, bacon, pancakes, bacon, pancakes, bacon, bacon, bacon. He just starts going crazy, and he's just devouring it at a crazy pace. Okay? You know how this ends? He does it. He gets it all done. There's still a couple minutes left on the thing. He slows down at the end just for some dramatic effect, but he's able to eat this giant 10-pound thing of pancakes. And there's just like, you can just see people are just talking to each other in the audience. Like, what did we just see? That was the weirdest thing I've ever seen. Like, how could he not eat pancakes, but he could eat pancakes and bacon, right? And so they asked him, they interviewed him afterwards. They said, all right, what was that? We don't know what we just saw. And he says, look, your body is amazing. It can stretch. It can handle crazy amounts of food. It can do so many different things. But what was getting in my way was that my brain was only letting me eat so much sweet foods, right? The pancakes was just too much. It was like, I'm done. I'm sick of this. I can't handle this. He started adding some bacon into it. Now that's salty, then the sweet, and then the salty. Now we're talking. Like, now things are starting to go, and his brain was able to let go and let this happen. Now, I tell you that story because I think in our lives, we've got that pie, right? And that represents the pancakes, and we think this is all the time we have. Okay? But the truth is, you add a little bacon to those pancakes, and you can eat more. So in our lives, with our family and with all these different things, we don't have time for education. We don't have time for personal development. What am I going to not do? Am I going to not sleep? Am I going to not spend time with my family so I could go spend an hour watching a YouTube video or something? Like, that doesn't make any sense. But the truth is, it doesn't have to make sense. The bacon didn't make sense to everyone there. But what happened was they were able to consume those pancakes because of that bacon. Okay? So what we've learned here is these three things. Education is learning from other people's experiences. Okay? You cannot do that on your own. You can try, but you can only live through your own experiences. Education lets you live through everyone else. Diverse education helps you find solutions. okay? Don't just do the same thing. Don't just take the same course. Don't just take the courses you love. That's what's great about Listen University is we've got all sorts of different topics. You never know when one of those topics is going to inspire you to solve a problem. And so you need this diversity of topic. And then the last thing is that bacon helps you eat more pancakes. And I want you to remember that. Bacon helps you to eat more pancakes. And so I leave you with that. Get your daily dose of bacon at Listen University. Thanks for letting me come talk tonight. Thanks.
Keaton Allen, thank you